Life Unrehearsed, brought to you by Caregiver Crosswalk, Dementia Care Consulting. Never roam alone.
All right, as Corey's there popping her head to what a man. Welcome back to Life Unrehearsed. I'm Matt Del Vecchio, specializing in life transitions, downsizing in the senior living industry.
And I'm Corey Sirota, clinical social worker and psychotherapist, specializing in grief and loss. It's Movember.
Yes, it is.
Which means a lot of things, a lot more than it used to. And we're going to talk about that. But first, Matt, did you ever have a mustache?
Well, I absolutely have participated in, the only time I have is during the month of November. And I used to be quite a regular every month. It got cheesier and cheesier every year. And then I got down to the handlebar mustaches. But now with facial hair kind of being the sort of the in thing now,
Yes.
We're going to have to ask our guests, if it's okay if you have a goatee or a beard, or if it doesn't count if you don't do a mustache.
Well, it's an interesting thing, and I was kind of curious. So I did some research, and I spoke with someone who happens to live in your home, and because I wanted to know, Matt with a mustache, what could one say about that? So. And I quote Stephanie, what did you think of Matt's mustache? And I open quote, I love Matt with a goatee, but the mustache was was awful. He looked like Ron Jeremy in the 70s. Not sexy at all. So thank you, Steph, for being so honest. And I don't think, Matt, that comes as a shock to you.
Yeah, no, not a compliment at all. Still love you, dear.
And she loves you, just no mustache. Goatee, cool, no mustache.
Right. We'll have to ask Matt, our guest coming up, if that's okay.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
So, as I said, today is November 1st, and we're at the start of Movember. We are really pleased to have the spokesperson for Movember, Matt Dubé. He's on the line, and he's going to share some incredible programs that they have organized throughout the month and moving forward. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. And don't worry, I empathize with how partners can feel at home when the mustache arrives. It is probably the number one excuse that we have to work on and iron out before we get folks to participate. So I'm there with you.
So true. But deep down, Matt, I think guys actually want to get these mustaches. It's their excuse for a month to wear a stash.
So
Exactly. When you're doing it for a good cause, no one can find any fault in that. They might snicker about it behind your back, but as long as they're donating to the cause, it's all good.
Fair enough. So let's speak about Movember. What causes does it support?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're the primary global charity for men's health, actually, and we focus on specific areas for men's health. So prostate cancer, which was the initial cause, and we've branched out to also deal with testicular cancer, mental health, and suicide prevention. It was kind of a natural continuity for us because obviously the mustache, we just did it. It sparks conversations, good and bad, but ultimately we're talking, and we want to get men talking about their health. And so it made sense, as we had success in the field of prostate cancer and funding that research to branch out, and mental health seemed like such a natural evolution of that when it came to getting men to open up, talk about how they're feeling, their state of being, if you will, and do something good for their health, both physical and otherwise.
Well, and good on you, Matt. And talking with Matt Dubé, the spokesperson for Movember, and so nice to see how you've evolved and branching out. We're going to tackle each one, and let's start with prostate and testicular cancer. How prevalent is it? Because I'm alarmed at some of these numbers.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, testicular cancer is the most common cancer among young men. And it's really important for them to self-examine. We had a bit of a tongue-in-cheek slogan a couple of years ago, "Know thy nuts." Really, it sounds silly, but you've got to keep up on your health, and it's important for young guys in their 20s to do that. I want to give you a statistic about testicular cancer. I know. Well, I'll come back to that, but for prostate cancer, let me just tell you, the survival rate is nearly 100% identified early. So getting men to go to the doctor to ask for that exam when they reach that age, 35, 40, and above. And the other thing about that, too, that's interesting is we actually did a survey at Movember a couple of years ago where we asked our participants and the general public how they felt about this stuff, just going back to that talking about your health piece and those conversations. Men who participate in Movember were over 50% more likely to have asked their doctor for an exam compared to less than 25% for the general public. So that's a pretty alarming number when it comes to the number of men getting checked, considering that it's 1 in 9 men in 2019 we're going to get prostate, particularly older men, of course. Which brings me back, if you guys don't mind, to testicular cancer. Same sort of statistic. Men who participate in Movember, over 60% more likely to have self-examined. General public, 20% and even less sometimes. So we really see how important it is to spark those conversations, because the risks are very high when it's identified properly and early.
So you're mentioning this, and I think that it's really important, and I hope people are listening to this and taking it to heart, in that the chance of survival increases exponentially when we know that there's the recovery rates are quite high for prostate cancer. I believe you mentioned. What about testicular cancer?
The same thing applies. Again, we're in the 90%. Nearly 100% when it's identified early. And really, that's been something that's been at the heart of what we do, because even when you look at the programming that Movember funds, we also do a lot of work in the survivorship space. There's one really great thing that we do here in Quebec and internationally as well, as a program called True North, where we offer sort of the follow-up stuff, sexual health, things like that. But there's also peer-to-peer piece to that as well, where you're paired up with a fellow prostate cancer survivor to have that conversation and understand what you went through with someone who has a similar experience. So that stuff's really important, not just identifying it and dealing with it, but also that stewardship as we go along the way on the road to recovery. Because when we talk about having conversations, it's not, hey, go get checked, you get checked, and we're done. At Movember, we really believe that it's important to go along that journey and make sure that men stay healthy, because there are also a lot of sad and tragic stories of people who've had different types of cancer afterwards, or where it's come back, right? We all know stories like that from near or far. So that's really something that's core to our values and the type of programming that we fund.
Absolutely. Listening to Life Unrehearsed with Matt and Corey. We have another Matt Dubé, spokesperson for Movember, on the line. And you're so right. Guys tend to be a little bit reserved, keep things inside, and Movember is a way to communicate a little bit more. And you know what? No shame in talking about these things. Now, you have evolved, as we've mentioned, taken on mental health and suicide prevention, and probably even a lot more significant now as we are in COVID, and mental health is obviously becoming an issue for both men and women. Can you tell us a little bit some of the initiatives you're doing for mental health?
Absolutely. And it's interesting, because we're talking about that a lot this year with the pandemic and the isolation that people are feeling. But I want to be clear that this is something we've been working on for a number of years at Movember. And I think it was, I don't want to say it's fortuitous, because we obviously know these are difficult circumstances, but it just made all the sense in the world to us, given what men are going through, what we're all going through, quite frankly, but in terms of our work, what men are going through and feeling isolated, and some of the challenges that come with that, to talk a lot about the work we've done there. So I just want to tell your listeners about two projects that we funded in Canada. So one's in Quebec, called Atu. It's in the northern regions, and it's what we call sort of an active research project. So what that means is there's stuff happening on the ground, and there's a researcher sort of spearheading it and getting data from that. And what it is, basically, it's based on something called men's sheds in English. And what it is it's these shipping containers that go from community to community, these isolated communities, and men in these communities who, because the rural communities tend to be more isolated and are at higher risk of suicide and other negative mental health outcomes, they get together, they talk about their issues, and they work. So they provide affordable labor in the community, handyman work, basically. So that's been something that's really positive. We're going to talk about more about that later in the month, some stuff that folks can find on our website, Movember.com. But the other piece is in Churchill, Manitoba, where we just in this month, or last month rather, inaugurated a wellness center, the first of its kind. And that's a northern community where there's obviously a lot of First Nations out there that are isolated, that come to that city to get different services. So it deals with all kinds of things that's really important in a remote community, and that's something that comes directly from the money raised by our community. And I think those are really two great positive examples in Canada of programs on the ground that have a real impact in people's lives that we funded.
Absolutely, and we want to hear more about them, but we do have to take a quick traffic update. When we come back, we're going to hear more about the ways to participate in Movember.
Life Unrehearsed, brought to you by Leanna Senior Transition Support, specialists in downsizing and seniors residences.
And welcome back to Life Unrehearsed. I'm Corey Sirota, along with my co-host Matt Delvecchio, and we are talking about changing the face of men's health with Movember spokesperson Matt Dubé. Matt, I understand that there is a new way of participating in Movember. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, off the top, we joked about, sometimes people are worried that kids won't recognize them with the mustache. Others, it's the partner that's not necessarily enticed by it. So obviously the mustache is a key piece of our identity. But what we're saying this year is mow your own way. You can move. You can host a virtual event, obviously, given the circumstances. Just do something to create some interest and raise funds. We have all sorts of ideas when people sign up on Movember.com. But more specifically, I wanted to point your listeners, and especially those who are choosing to participate, we're rallying the Movember community around something we're calling Move Mondays. So we're working with a gym owner on the South Shore of Montreal in Longueuil, who's named Adrian Davis, a retired CFL player, who is participating in Movember this year. And every Monday, he's going to be hosting workouts on the Movember Canada Facebook page that we're live streaming at lunchtime. And we're encouraging folks to get engaged that way. We talked a lot about the impact of being isolated, working from home. I think one of those things is the fact that people, obviously gyms are closed in a lot of areas, but also the fact that when you're stuck at home, you're not maybe getting as active as you'd like to be. No equipment required. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to it. So once people have signed up on our website, they can tune in for the workouts on every Monday for the month of Movember, and there's going to be quite a few Mondays this year, so it worked out well.
Yeah, so smart, and a good way to adjust in our pandemic world. And we do want to, I love the theme, Move Mondays and mow your own way. So we're going to talk a little bit of other ways about how people can participate. But first, you probably heard, as many of our listeners heard, about this tragic event in Quebec City last night, although not confirmed, and there were some perhaps mental health issues, and this is a big part of what you're trying to advocate for with Movember. And even those that may even be having some suicidal thoughts, and Movember's taken a proactive stance with that. What would you suggest for any of those going through some very, very tough mental health times and even suicidal thoughts?
For sure. And let me just say, because you mentioned it, I mean, being in Quebec, I think we're all shaken out by what happened last night. These types of events are difficult enough to deal with under normal circumstances, and the grief's probably even harder to process, given that we're all sort of isolated right now. So obviously my thoughts are with the family of the victims, the Quebec City community, and everyone who's feeling affected by this. And to your question, I think, obviously if someone's if there's an emergency, we encourage people to call 911 if there's immediate danger. But beyond that, when it's someone who's distressed, their help is out there. There's phone lines to call, national ones, some here in Quebec. We actually worked on a tool at Movember if we're talking about situations where people might sense someone in their family or their friends is going through a difficult time. Not obviously something where there's immediate danger, because again, the actions to take in those circumstances are different. But when they feel something might be off with someone, we developed a tool with experts called Movember Conversations. And that's on our website as well. And what we hope to do with that platform is give people the tools to walk through that conversation. We talk a lot about men opening up about how they're feeling, but let's be clear, it's also challenging for people, their loved ones, to maybe bring up the topic with them as well. So we're hoping with this tool, again, that we've developed with experts, that it'll give people sort of a bit of a walkthrough over different scenarios. Just to give you some of the examples that are on there, job loss, the death of a loved one, things like that, where you can really walk through it. And I would encourage people, of course, if they're really in a really dire situation, to reach out to the resources that are available. There's hotlines to call, the Canadian National Suicide Prevention Line, and things of that nature, where people can find the help that they need.
Well, thank you so much. Matt Dubé is talking about Movember and all these incredible, important initiatives. You're preaching to the choir when you're talking to a grief and loss professional about the concern around mental health and what you're doing. Can you quickly go through some of the other programs? Because I want people to know, and it's not just for men to get involved.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when we talk about Mow Your Own Way, I mean, part of that is because we want it to be inclusive. Since Movember's inception, there's been a strong cohort of Mo Sisters, as we call them. So women are, of course, welcome to participate, and we want it to really be something where people can have fun with and everyone can get engaged with. So again, obviously the mustache isn't going anywhere. It's part of our identity, but we really want anyone to feel that whatever way they choose, whatever challenge they want to give themselves or way that they want to get involved, that they can do that to raise money. And we, again, that money, look, I want to give an example actually specific to Quebec that I think really shows what an impact the funds raised can have. Since 2007, so when Movember started in Canada, our community in Quebec, many of whom are obviously in Montreal, we raised over $15 million, and we've reinvested into the province over $20 million. So that's gone to over 75 programs, particularly obviously in the university space, where we've got the experts that are there that do constant research. And I think really that demonstrates how what a long way that can go. A lot of the time I find people are sort of intimidated by, they might see a team raising a lot of money. Every dollar matters, and I think that is a great demonstration of that. So it's really important, and we really want everyone to stay engaged. And just to repeat, I think the conversations we're sparking, as we all know, a conversation is a two-way street. It's supposed to be anyway. So, yeah, we want men to talk about their health and their mental and physical well-being, but we also want their loved ones to be engaged as well. We have one last point I want to make. I don't want to go on too long here, but a point that's really important to make. We have so many participants who, a lot of daughters and wives who are talking about their lost loved ones, and that's why they mow. And I think that that's so important as well.
Yeah, such a good point. This is Matt Dubé, spokesperson for Movember. And Matt, as people, if you want to donate, we're going to ask you for the website. But what I found when I wanted to donate or inquire about information, your website is amazing because it gives so many different examples of how you can participate. There is a ton of educational information as well. So when you are looking to donate, and we want to encourage everyone to donate, get on that site. It's so informative, and have those conversations. So Matt, just as we wrap it up, where can people go to find out a little bit more?
Well, as you mentioned, our website's the starting point for all of this. For folks to sign up, all they need to do is go to Movember.com. You can't miss it at the top of the page, the big fat sign up button that's there. They click on that. It takes you through the process. It's very straightforward. Anyone who's ever created any kind of profile can do it. You can also create a team that way. So if you're getting your friends, your family, your workplace involved, you can do that. And as you said, we've gone through so much information in the time together. There's even more we could have touched on. Anything anyone's wondering about, the information's all there, and we're always happy to connect with folks if they have any further questions. We really want to be transparent about this. We believe in the conversation piece too, so we love talking to our community. But again, the starting point is signing up at Movember.com. And these are serious issues. These are tough times we're all in, but we like to have a lot of fun, and I think we could all use a little bit of that. So that's at the heart of what we do in our campaigns, and we hope people will join us in that.
Just wonderful, Matt. Thank you so much for taking some time and spreading the word.
Thank you both.
All right.
Really appreciate it.
Corey, what do we've got next week?
Next week, we're going to be talking to Marcy Warhoff. This is a story of how one woman, after years of living a double life, packing school lunches by day and giving lap dances by night, finally became an inspirational leader, the inspirational leader she was always meant to be.
My goodness, talk about a life unrehearsed. You need to hear Marcy's story next week. And it's approaching, next week's show is November 8th, very, very close to Remembrance Day. So we're going to be talking to a 97-year-old veteran that participated in the Second World War. And we're also going to have Federal Member of Parliament for Lac St. Louis, Mr. Francis Scarpaleggia, on our show. And we want to thank everyone for listening today. And we, of course, want to thank our technical producer, Dave Simon. Catch us next week, as you could hear us every week on Sunday, CJD 800 at 4 p.m.